Whoever you are out there, wherever you are, I sure hope you had a better weekend than one Dan Mullen. Things got rough down in Jacksonville. Christian Gokel alongside Cam Mercery here on Second Down. Glad to have y'all hanging out with us here on ESPN Radio. So much to dive into today. Gonna wrap up the World Series action from over the weekends as the Braves and the Astros head back to Houston for Game 6 and potentially Game 7. Game 6 coming up tomorrow night after the Astros get that big win there at Truist Park. The first loss for the Braves at home this postseason. We'll dive into that, but Cam, I think we got to start in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia,
that early domination.
I was expecting a game. I said my prediction was 41-13.
Yep.
And I was expecting kind of what happened initially at first, which was Florida would come out in the first quarter and give Georgia their best shot, right? Mm-hmm. If there was a chance for Florida to hop out to the lead, it'd be in that first quarter and then maybe just try to hang on and make a mess of the game from that point on. Instead, what you got was Florida hanging around, Georgia kind of not getting out of its own way, and then just kind of the apathy Georgia, I guess, felt towards Florida. Like, it wasn't rushed, it wasn't fervent, it wasn't dominant. It was just, we're better than you. We'll put our guys out there. Eventually, they'll make plays, even if this is a kind of a B-C performance for us.
Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to maul you, and you're going to do something stupid, and we're going to score, and we're going to get out of here with a big win. And that's exactly what happened. It felt like Georgia ends up winning that game 34-27. It felt like Georgia was 27 points better than Florida.
Yeah, it did. What I'll take from that game is the defense is absolutely dominant. I don't think we could question that anymore. They dominated from the line of scrimmage from start to finish. I know they gave up that last touchdown. I mean, that happens. I mean, Florida almost beat freaking Alabama. So,
well, yeah, Florida hasn't been shut out in a long
time since, I think, in the 80s. They have the longest current streak. But, I mean, if there's anything to be alarmed about, you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think the offense really got going at all. They only ran 50 plays. I don't really think they got going at all. And maybe that's because, they had a bye week and that may have cooled them off a little bit. But, I mean, the defense really stepped up and did their part. I just need the offense to kind of, creep on up when you go against those better opponents like Ohio State who can score in Alabama.
Well, you scored 3 offensive touchdowns in the game, and 2 of them were from 36 yards or shorter in terms of the entire drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about him in a second, but Nolan Smith had a massive game, set you up in short yardage situations twice there at the end of the second quarter where it was a 3-0 game, and then by the time you go in at halftime, it's 24-0. That all due to your defense. 3 turnovers there at the end of the first half for Florida. The first one, it's the definition of a Debo, where Nolan Smith just took the ball away from Anthony Richardson. He said, that's mine. And a lot of people thought it was a touchdown in the stadium, but his knee was clearly down. Very next play, James Cook scores from 11 yards out. Georgia's up 10-0. Florida gets the ball back. Their first play, they throw an interception. I think I should tell you about second down. Their second play of that drive, they try to throw the ball over the middle. And this is another thing I want to talk about too, is everyone keeps saying, oh, Georgia blitzed on that play and it got pressure on Florida. Kinda. Georgia sent 4. We talked about this last week.
Yeah, they can send 4.
The reason this Georgia defense is so good is because they can send 4 and get home.
Yep.
And you drop Nolan Smith and Travon Walker back out. Travon Walker almost intercepts the pass for Anthony Richardson, tips it up. Nolan Smith gets the interception. Very next play, 36 yards from Stetson Bennett to Kearis Jackson. All of a sudden, it's 17-0. You're pressing, and then they throw the out route that, I mean, Nakobe Dean's different. He had a couple of plays in this game that were special.
Hey, he might be a top 10 pick, man. He's working his way up there.
I certainly think he deserves to be. What, Roquan was a number 8 overall pick?
Yeah.
I certainly think he's deserving of that, but he just sits on that out route right there and picks it off, takes it to the house, 24-0 at halftime, right? So that's where you're at. But to your point about the offense, I agree with you. That offense felt clunky. I think we got last year's Alabama and Kentucky Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Just throwing into
I didn't want to be the one to say it.
Yeah, throwing into double coverage consistently. I mean, he had, I'd say, 2 really good passes. He had, and they're both to Kearis Jackson, which you just see how much it means for Georgia to have him back at 100%. If he is at 100%, at least 90 to 95%. He scores on that long 36-yard touchdown, the very next play after Nolan Smith's interception. But then he also had like a 15-yard route across the middle that Stetson was able to step in through and complete that. But outside of those two throws, a very meh day for Stetson Bennett. Two plays really boosted his yardage, and he still only had around 161 yards. Two of the plays really boosted that. He had a tight end screen to Brock Bowers that went for a chunk, and then he had just a wide open Darnell Washington that he hit on a drag route, and he was able to get up the sideline for a big chunk. Outside of that, Stetson Bennett was very below average, I would say, in Jacksonville.
And that kind of alarms me, but at the same time, it's letting me know I think JT is on the way for these next couple of games. I would hope so. I just, when I watched Ohio State this past Saturday, I mean, they can move. They got some guys on the outside that could just burn you. And keeping up with those type of teams, I mean, you have a good defense, but they're going to score. You got to have a quarterback that can make that happen. I don't know.
You say that, and here's where I'm at after Saturday. The narrative has been eventually you're going to play a team that's going to make you score. I'm not sure that that's the case anymore.
You might be right this year.
Like, this defense is that nasty, is that good. Yeah. I think Jason Kirk made a really good comparison, and he said this Georgia defense is as good at what they do as the 2019 LSU offense was as good as what they did.
That's a fair comparison.
And that unit was dominant enough, and not to take anything away from the LSU defense, but the LSU defense didn't really get good until like the last 3 or 4 games of the season. They had some games where they gave up a lot of points.
They just created turnovers.
Right. Yeah. But they were an opportunistic defense, and I think all Georgia needs right now is an opportunistic offense. Just score enough. If you can get to what point total right now with Georgia do you feel comfortable like, yep, you're not losing? Because to me,
if they play Alabama, 35.
But see, to me, it's like 24.
Ooh. Against Bama?
Bama scored 32 points against Florida?
Yeah. I would say 35 because I think Nick Saban, knowing he loses that game, he can't make the playoffs. He's throwing everything at you, the kitchen sink. I'll probably say 35.
I don't see anybody scoring that many points on this defense.
That's true. We haven't seen it. I mean, what's the most points?
But look, like maybe the best offense that you've played so far is, if you being honest, probably Auburn. Yeah, they scored 10.
And Auburn's look really good.
Yeah.
That's not going to be an easy game for Bama.
Auburn just handled Ole Miss.
That's not going to be an easy game for Bama.
Auburn controls their own destiny in the SEC West, so that Iron Bowl is going to be massive. They got a big one coming up this weekend at Texas A&M. So that's a big game because Texas A&M could fall out of the SEC West race. Auburn trying to stay in the driver's seat there because, again, they control their own destiny. It's going to come down to that Alabama game. But just looking at this offense, it wasn't a overwhelming performance. And like I said about Stetson, he had 161 yards, but 70 of those came on 2 completions to tight ends that were less than 2 yards downfield. Brock Bowers caught the ball right at the line of scrimmage and was able to scamper down the sideline. And then Darnell Washington caught a 32-yarder that he was able to pretty much do the same thing, just a drag route. Yeah. Everybody else cleared out, able to hit him on the drag route. But, I mean, thinking in the first half, he threw into double coverage to Ladd McConkey, who was, again, the corner and safety had a better shot at the ball than McConkey. He had a play in the first half as well where he sort of scrambled out of pressure, was making his way to the sideline, kind of running parallel to the line of scrimmage, and just last second threw the ball at a covered up guy on the sideline, and that ball gets tipped. He almost gets intercepted. He ends up with 2 interceptions. The one in the first half, again, you have all the momentum, and you throw into clearly double coverage to John Fitzpatrick, who, no offense to John Fitzpatrick, but he's your third option as a receiver tight end, right? I think he was running one of those routes where if it's a blown coverage, great, but he's not really one of the options on that play, and just threw into double coverage and got picked off. Same thing happened in the second half. I mean, this was a bad performance by Stetson Bennett. I think that's okay to say.
Yeah, it's okay to say, but one thing I'm happy about, and you tell me if I'm wrong, this year it just feels like when you go into games, a couple of years ago, we're going to games being like, dang, I don't know if Georgia win this, or you're nervous. Now you're kind of feeling like we get assert our dominance pretty much against anybody, knowing how good their defense is. I know Tennessee is kind of a game where you got to have your head on tight, going on the road. But after that, dare I say it, smooth sailing for the rest of the year to the SEC championship.
Well, what's funny is like you're saying Tennessee there, and they're a 4-loss team right now.
Yeah, but that offense, it's just, they're a 4-loss team, but I've seen crazier things happen over the years.
Certainly, and it's going to be in Knoxville. That one actually announced. So just a couple updates for Georgia's schedule. This week they have Missouri, which
Yeah,
Missouri's bad.
Yeah, you should handle
Missouri's bad. They were in a shootout with Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt, so Missouri's bad.
Yeah.
And then after that, and that's a noon kick in Athens. Then after that, you head to Knoxville, which, to your point, maybe your biggest game left in the regular season or toughest opponent left in the regular season. But this 4-4 Tennessee, they might be under 500 by the time
they play somebody decent.
I was about to say they play somebody big this weekend. No, they already played Alabama.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they did.
They play somebody big this weekend. I think it might be Kentucky. I think they're at Kentucky this weekend.
Yep,
but
at Kentucky.
Yeah, so they'll very real possibility they're under 500 team. But an exciting offense. You play them next weekend, and that's a 3:30 kick from Knoxville on CBS. So a big game there. And then I think it's Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech.
I think you're going to see a lot of JT these next 4 weeks.
I don't know. I from reading the tea leaves and talking to some people, it sounds like JT's still hurt. And I don't know if that's the reason he doesn't play. And just kind of hindsight being what it is, you look back and say, if he's still not 100% and you're coming into a game against Florida, a team that can get after the quarterback a little bit, we saw in the first half, especially Georgia's offensive line did not play great, and Stetson had to kind of improvise a little bit. Do you want to put JT in a war, or do you want to let him come back against a Missouri?
Oh, no. You let him come back against Missouri. I think the perfect game.
But that's assuming they think JT's better, which I don't know if that's the case.
I'll put it like this. If he's healthy, I say bring him back into Missouri, let him play a couple of series, and then you figure out about Tennessee. And then I think you just do the 1-2 combo against Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech and see where you go. You have
to make that choice soon, because you can't get through Georgia Tech and be like, all right, now it's JT's turn against Alabama. It's just it's not going to work out.
We got to find out who the starting quarterback is soon.
But going back to my original point, I don't know if it matters.
You might have a point.
Georgia's defense is that good. I know Brooks tried to tell us this a couple weeks ago, because I'm kind of with you. I just have that mindset where it's like eventually somebody's going to score 30 and you're going to have to go back and forth with them. And eventually, this is the underrated thing. And I want to go back, and when I get some time, I want to go back and look and see what the average starting field position is for Georgia's offense, because I feel like at least 2 or 3 times a game they're getting put in plus territory. And that's really kind of boosting the stats for this offense, because again, you scored 3 touchdowns. One of the drives was 11 yards, the other one was 36 yards. And the only touchdown you really scored on a significant drive was Zamir White busting a 40-yard touchdown run at the end after Florida had pretty much given up.
Yeah. I guess what I could say is if they could go undefeated, which I assume they will, now you're making it to the point where you beat Bama, you get them out the way in the SEC championship. But if you lose, you just play them again. So essentially, you play them twice, or you get them out the way. I think you get them out the way now. I don't think there's a team in the country, including Ohio State, that could stand with Georgia.
That's true. Just looking around the country, Oklahoma's been very meh. I mean, they look good this past weekend, but the week before that, they had to survive at Kansas. Ohio State, to me, Ohio State might be, outside of Alabama, the best team in the country. Cincinnati is not doing themselves any favors.
No.
Consistently struggling against some of the teams they're playing. I mean, they were going back and forth with the Navy a couple weeks ago. So just looking down, listen, I like Michigan State. I know your boy plays for Michigan State.
Oh, yeah. I already know. I told him that.
I don't know that we learned anything about Michigan State this weekend.
Other than Kenneth Walker's probably the Heisman.
Literally one ball bounces the other way, and Michigan wins.
Yeah, and Michigan wins. Yeah.
Right, so I don't know that we learned anything about either one of those teams, but I don't think either one of them are top 4 teams in the country.
Nah, I mean, I've told you that.
Kenneth Walker's good. Here's a scary thought. Do you know where Kenneth Walker was last year?
Wake Forest.
Yeah. And Wake Forest is undefeated.
Yeah.
And scoring a stupid amount of points every game.
That quarterback they have is pretty
Sam Hartman's really good.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? And he's played, this is his 4th season now, at least playing in one game for Wake Forest. So he's got a lot of experience. Can you imagine if Kenneth Walker was still a Demon Deacon?
Yeah, I mean,
the offense be lit as hell.
Can you imagine if Wake Forest wins out? They got 4 more games.
No, I can't imagine that.
Read
their schedule to me.
Okay, yeah, they could lose this one at North Carolina.
Right,
that's a tough one.
And
NC State.
Yep.
At Clemson.
Okay.
At Boston College. Those are part of the cream of the crop right
games.
there.
The 4 hardest games are still on the schedule.
They'll lose one of those.
I think they'll probably lose 4 of them.
All 4 of them?
The one I might give them is Boston College.
Yeah, because Boston College is injured.
Yeah. So okay, they might. So I mean, going from a darling to 9-3.
It's still a nice season for Wake Forest, though.
Season.
Yeah, Wake Forest.
Imagine if they had Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, they probably will win the ACC.
Kenneth Walker's got the Midas touch.
Oh man, he's winning the Heisman.
Puts his hands on the Wake Forest program. All of a sudden they're undefeated, and he's like, "All right, I have to move on."
Yeah,
And then he goes to Michigan State, and they're undefeated.
Yeah, Thanos, all the Infinity Stones.
I'm not done with Dan Mullen yet. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back and I want to dive more into this Florida Georgia game because Dan Mullen, I guess it should be Georgia Florida after this weekend. Dan Mullen just can't get out of his own way, and he did it again today in a press conference. So we'll dive into that when we come back right here on Second Down. Cam, there's a lot of stats we can look at coming from this Georgia-Florida game, and just absolute domination from this Georgia defense. But this one I think stands out the most. Can you tell me Georgia's record since last year's Florida game?
12-0.
13-0.
13-0. I'm one
Georgia has not lost
since Florida
last year, right?
Yep.
Can you tell me Florida's record since that same game?
Their overall record?
Yep.
They're like 4 and
that's a little bit of that.
Oh,
they're 8-7.
8-7. I mean, that's still bad for Florida.
They got a couple of games in there where they played in the SEC championship, obviously losing that one. And then they got an extra game last year over Georgia because Georgia had that Vanderbilt game get canceled. So that's where the disparity comes in. But one team's 13-0, one team's 8-7 since Jacksonville 2020. And it kind of tells you the directions those programs are going right now, right? And Dan Mullen, we talked about this last week, doesn't do himself any favors by the way he approaches press conferences. And we're going to, in a second, get to a quote from his press conference today. But just the way he approaches that, the way he deals with his team, he kind of said last year they got beat by Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. He was like, well, we played our last game last week, or like in our last game back in December.
As a coach, you should never say that.
No. And so it's just, I'm curious what you think. I just, obviously two teams that are heading in drastically different directions. Curious what you think about that. As you just swallow down some Halloween candy.
My bad. Starburst.
Delicious. What flavor you got there?
Lemon.
Okay, that's a good one.
Lemon. But I mean, my thing is, if I'm a player, I'm in that locker room. They met the last year, like you said. Well, we play our last week. So what's that supposed to mean about me?
Yeah.
As
that's the guy who's coming back to play for you next year. And you're like, yeah, well, this team.
And then when you see that as a recruit, say, your first or second year, you're coming in there developing. How are you supposed to feel that way? And then now you come into here in this season and you haven't looked on track. You haven't looked up the par to your opponents. You're losing to LSU, who's having a down year. You lost to Kentucky, who you normally dominate the past 20 years. Alabama will give you that. Georgia spanks you. Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It's funny that you say that about recruiting, and because Kirby Smart made a statement after the game about recruiting and why Georgia's been so successful. But Dan Mullen in his press conference this morning was asked about recruiting. We have some audio from that clip right here.
Is a different approach needed for the
after the season, and when it gets this recruiting time, we can talk about recruiting.
Sounds good.
Okay. Next question.
We're in the season right now. We'll do recruiting after the season. Now, some people have come out and said, trying, I guess, to defend Dan Mullen, they're saying, like, he said, we're not going to talk about recruiting during the season. I think it's the optics there, Cam, because Kirby Smart said after the game, basically, there's no substitute for recruiting. You can do all the coaching in the world, but if you are out recruited at the level it seems like Georgia's out recruited Florida right now, it doesn't matter how well you can coach at this level, right? Because everybody's a good coach at this level.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how well you can coach or the schemes you can draw up. If my guys are just better than yours, and I think that's the simplest way to put this Georgia team out there is, and to me, it reminds me of the 2016 Clemson defensive line, where it's just, you're going to win 95% of the games you play just because of those four dudes you had on that defensive line. If I could just recruit better than you and we're at the same level, I'm going to win a majority of the matchups. It doesn't matter how well you can coach against me.
Dan Mullen's getting it confused. This is not the pros where you draft and you keep your same players for the next 5-6 years if you choose to do so. Recruiting is 24/7, man. It's year round. It's 365. And being a coach at Florida, you have to be able to recruit, especially against, rival schools and such. I mean, I hope he doesn't really mean what he just said. Look at recruiting at the end of the year, but that just goes to show you, like, the state that they're in right now and the state that Georgia's in is complete opposite.
And again, to me, it comes down to what you're doing in recruiting. Look at who you have. You have Nakobe Dean, 5-star. Travon Walker, 5-star. Jalen Carter, 5-star. Keely Ringo, 5-star. Nolan Smith, #1 overall player in his class. What did he do? He had a rip for setting you up at the 11-yard line with that fumble recovery, and then he had his first career interception in this game as well, setting you up at the 36-yard line.
Yep.
5-star, right? They come off the field, 5-star replaces him,
Yep.
right? I think the funny thing is maybe the best player on the entire team is Jordan Davis, and he's a 3-star. But still, that's still recruiting. These teams are still going after Jordan Davis just because the recruiting services didn't have him ranked as high. And I think a lot of that had to do with how big he was in high school and just concerns about his weight. And that's been an ongoing thing at Georgia. But it's just, listen, you can come up with all the tactics you want to. There's a play in this game where Nakobe Dean was responsible for a running back coming out of the backfield, was late on getting to him, and still ran to the spot faster than the running back and broke up the play.
It's what a lot of these scouts been saying. If you read what scouts are saying, because I know you have, but for the viewers out there, they literally are saying Georgia has their whole defense could get drafted. And when I mean whole defense, not first through 7, I'm talking about a lot of them getting drafted in the first, second, and third round, early draft picks, the whole entire defense. This is a generational type defense. And I mean, it's like what you say, it's a test of recruiting. You come in, you take out starting cornerback, you put in another 5-star. It's they're 5-stars everywhere. Our 3rd string quarterback is 4th string. It's a freaking 5-star.
Yeah, the one starting is the only one that wasn't. I think Stetson was like a 3-star. Coming out of Pierce County. Outside of that, Carson Beck, 4-star. JT Daniels is a 5-star. Brock Vandergrift, 5-star. Yeah, you got another 5-star coming in, Gunnar Stockton.
Crazy.
If you look across the offensive line, 4 and 5 stars all the way across the offensive line. So it's just people always laugh at the stars, but
no, I mean,
look at the results. I mean, look at what Alabama's been able to do. Look at what Clemson's been able to do. I do want to play Kirby Smart's full quote here on recruiting because I think this is probably the biggest storyline and shows you what the gap is between Georgia and Florida right now.
I mean, guys, if you don't recruit, there's no coach out there that can out-coach recruiting, okay? I don't care who you are. The best coach to ever play the game better be a good recruiter because no coaching is going to out-coach players. I mean, anybody will tell you our defense is good because they got good players. So spending time on the phone, spending time with people at your house, spending time with people when they come to your campus. I'm not with my family when I'm doing that. My family sacrifices so that I can go and spend time with other people's families so that we have good players. So, that's 25% evaluation. That's 50% recruiting. And another 25% is going to be coaching. But if you don't recruit, guys, you got no chance. Just go look. Look at the best teams out there. They got good football players. And that's the reason I believe in recruiting. And I believe you better always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. Because if you're not, somebody else is.
I mean, how stark is the difference between those two responses?
I mean, it's completely different. And you tell me if I'm wrong. There's this run. Well, I wouldn't say run yet, but yeah, I'm starting to get kind of like the vibes of what Clemson had a couple of years ago from that 15 to like 18 run where it might be Kirby's time to hit that stride. I mean, I'm starting to feel that.
I haven't seen anybody that's better this season.
I have.
I mean, Alabama, it feels like, and if you want to talk about a team where he got that model from, it's working under Nick Saban, where it's just constantly recruiting, always recruiting. And you can talk about the transfer portal all you want to. I think the only significant guy playing snaps right now from Georgia out of the transfer portal is Darion Kendrick.
Yep.
He's the only one. He's been unbelievable, and he filled a gap. But I think for the best teams in the country, for the cream of the crop teams in the country, it's still going to come back to recruiting. As big as you think the transfer portal is, because Nick Saban said this, the best players aren't going to leave the school they initially go to, right? Like, why would they leave if they're starting? The best players aren't going to leave. Typically what you're going to get are guys in a Darion Kendrick situation where he had a disagreement with Dabo Swinney. Eventually the relationship just wasn't there anymore, so he decided to leave. Or you're going to get a guy who got beat out.
Yeah.
And so you're going to go head-to-head with the player that got beat out against the player who beat him out, right? So it's just the transfer portal is going to be there, but I think for the best teams, it's going to be, hey, I need to fill a role, right? Because for the most part, through recruiting, I already have the best players. I just need to fill that role, i.e. Alabama. They've had some middle linebackers get hurt. Let's go get Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee, right? It's just that's where I think it's going to be. You're not going to be – now, some teams like Michigan State with Mel Tucker, they looked at their roster, said it wasn't good enough, and I have to go out there and fill it up.
They went and got some guys.
With some guys from the transfer portal, i.e. Kenneth Walker, who, as you mentioned, maybe the favorite right now to win the Heisman after his performance. He's got some big games coming up, but recruiting, that's where it's at. And so anyone who tells you, I don't know, with the transfer portal, you'll probably see a little bit of decline in the amount of intensity they put in that. Look at Florida. Florida has a ton of transfers on that team.
If you want some good recruits, come to the South. I mean, Florida has a Georgia Brenton Cox.
Brenton Cox is the guy, big number one, and he's a really good player, but he's the guy who transferred. And then you have guys like Jermaine Johnson, who literally just because he wasn't able to play enough on this Georgia defense, and he played. It's not like he wasn't playing, but because, and he said this, he said, quote, I wasn't getting enough film, he transfers to Florida State, and he's having a great season.
Yep.
But why did he transfer? Because he wasn't going to play every snap over Adam Anderson and Nolan Smith.
It works that way, and it's won this for him because he's going to get drafted now. He has that film, but that's just how the game goes. For every guy who
works out like that, there's 10
there's 10
who it doesn't work out.
And
so when you have one coach saying, I'm taking time away from my family to go out and recruit, to spend time with other people's families to make sure we have good players, I think he gets it.
No,
when you're trying to win at the highest level, you know what you need? The best players. Because the best players make any scheme look good. We saw it last year with Dan Mullen.
Instinct, man.
We saw it last year with Dan Mullen.
Yep.
Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask, Kadarius Toney. How different did this offense look last year?
All first round. Well, Kyle Trask, second round pick.
He's basically a first round pick.
Yeah,
was he the what?
I think it was the first pick of the first round. Oh, no, the last pick of the second
round.
But I mean any other draft, he'll be the number one quarterback off the board this year for sure.
Maybe, with the way some of these guys have just kind of underwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just think that just shows you the biggest difference right now between these two football teams. And at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were ready to jump on the train that, hey, Florida's gone past Georgia in the SEC East. Florida's made that jump. Dan Mullen has finally gotten Kirby Smart
back down to earth because of recruiting, though. It's all because of recruiting.
Well, this is what I consistently talk about, which is the best teams and the best programs. And this is across any sport, but specifically in college football, the best teams, and it's hard in college football because you're constantly having roster turnover, is the best teams keep the window open. That doesn't inherently mean they're going to win every single year, but they have a chance every year to win. Right? Georgia under Kirby Smart, after that first season where he was just, you could tell he was trying to set up and get his guys in there, has had that window open.
Yep, he's giving you that chance.
Last year, Florida under Dan Mullen had the window wide open, and it just came crashing down on their fingers. Georgia consistently has that window open where Jake Fromm goes 11-1, 3 straight years. You're in the SEC championship each year. He moves on. You kind of have that weird year last year in 2020. And I won't even take away from Florida. Florida last year, I don't even know if Georgia has Jake Fromm if Georgia's beating Florida last year. Just as good as that offense was. That offense was different.
Yeah, I don't think they'd beat
that. I mean, that offense took Alabama to the brink, and that was one of the best offenses we've ever seen in Alabama. So it's just, if you want the best program, I think this is what a lot of athletic directors look at, which I think might be why Dan Mullen, you start to see he's in trouble. I think the next step is you fire Todd Grantham, and then after that, it's just the death spiral. Is Dan Mullen doesn't have that window open. And so if you're looking at your athletic director outside of the one SEC championship appearance, what are you looking at?
Dan Mullen, it depends on how he finishes this season off. I'll put it like that. Whether he keeps his job or not. If you go like 6-6, I don't think you're keeping it. But I mean, his schedule looks favorable. They should finish 8-4.
You're 4-4. You go 8-4, and you play in a Florida bowl game like Capital One Bowl, something like that, Outback Bowl, and you go 9-4.
That'll keep you a job.
Do you know what 9-4 is, Cam?
What?
Basically, what you went last year.
That is, yeah, that is what you went last year. Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, that's just kind of where Florida's at right now. I think a lot of it has to do with the way these two coaches look at recruiting. We got more to come. We'll dive into more of the weekend that was across college football. Auburn got a massive win. They're in the driver's seat now. They just have to take down Alabama. And I think there's a stat from that game that where if you're an Auburn fan, probably makes you feel a little bit better about your chances of doing that. Also a wild weekend in the Big Ten. We'll dive into all that when we come back right here on Second Down. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source, as Cam brings us back with a little Lauryn Hill action.
Yeah.
Respect.
Love Lauryn Hill.
Feeling it. We got the cool weather outside, playing the bops. I'm in a good mood today.
Yeah, I'm in a good mood. I'm
got
in a real
the
good
Braves
mood.
hat on, still repping. Not overly concerned.
I wouldn't go with the not overly concerned, but definitely got to rep the hometown. Definitely got to do that.
You got 2 games to win 1. You got Max
Man.
Fried and Ian Anderson.
And I'm from Atlanta.
You got the backstops. You got them backstops. I'm just saying. I'm with you. It ain't over till it's over.
Oh, nah. It ain't over till it's over.
Not over until it's over. Now you're heading back to Houston. Now you got to play with the DH again.
Yeah. It being from Atlanta, it's so bad that we are a sports talk show and we don't even talk about the Falcons because they're just so.
So, do you want to talk about what happened yesterday?
I mean, we can.
Because that's like I think
man.
for like the mental health of our listeners, we should probably avoid that conversation.
We should. Man, I'm so
like
frustrated.
think about the 2 days you had, where you had the Braves and Georgia winning on Saturday.
Beautiful.
Then you come to Sunday,
it just goes
Falcons
downhill.
stink up the joint against a bad Carolina team. I think that's fair to say. I know Carolina lost 4 games in a row coming into that game.
Exactly. I mean, I know Carolina they have a good defense. They have a good defense. They're number 1 against the run, number 10 against the pass. They have a good defense, but it's embarrassing to just watch Matt Ryan get beat up for year after year. And then what I see yesterday happened game 1.
Yeah.
It's just embarrassing. I know we don't have Gage and Ridley on the outside, but it's just embarrassing to watch. Patterson's been hot this year. You don't even play him because you want Mike Davis to get his revenge back against Carolina. It was just all over the place yesterday.
The Falcons aren't good, and they probably won't be good for a couple of years. You got to give Arthur Smith a chance.
No, I love Arthur Smith. I think what he's done so far, 3-4, you're a game away from being 4-3.
That roster is not good, and so I think the job he's done is pretty admirable. I think Dean Pease, all of a sudden, you're seeing this defense isn't playing terribly.
They only gave up 19 points.
Yeah, this defense isn't playing terribly, so it's starting to turn around a little bit. Listen, Cam, you still got 10 games. You still got 10 games in the regular season.
And those 10 games are Dallas coming up soon. You got a lot of meat of that schedule coming up. I know we play the Saints, their 3rd string quarterback, and that might be an L. We don't have an offensive line. They struggle. They're struggling.
Jameis got hurt, but that just probably means Taysom Hill will start, and Taysom Hill just absolutely obliterates the Falcons.
He owns us.
So there you go. I want to stay with college football here, though, Cam. What did you feel like was the most impressive win from the weekend?
You want me to be honest?
Yes.
Auburn over Ole Miss.
That's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, that was impressive. Bo gets big wins, man. He really does. He just hasn't had one against Georgia, thank God. But other than that, he's beaten everybody.
And I know Matt Corral had the Heisman hopes. He's probably still up there coming into this game, but no touchdowns and interception. Maybe that derails him from that a little bit. He gets hurt in this game.
Yeah.
But he comes back in and he's throwing interceptions left and right. I mean, Ole Miss is done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Ole Miss is done. I mean, still 6-2. That's nice, but Ole Miss is done now. Interesting part is, like we talked about earlier on in the show, Auburn, Alabama. That's going to be a good game.
How interesting is it? Like that's my question to you. How interesting is this game, or is Auburn, because they already have 2 losses.
Yeah.
1 to Georgia, 1 to Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
If they run the table and beat Alabama, this could be very 2017.
They'll be a top 4 team.
If they run the table, beat Alabama, get to the SEC championship, and it's really hard to beat a team twice in the same year, somehow beat Georgia in the SEC championship, are you putting 2-loss
Absolutely
Auburn in the college football playoff?
Absolutely, because I think the rankings come out tomorrow, the college football playoffs. I guarantee you they're somewhere in the 11-12 range. They beat Texas A&M, who's going to be ranked higher than them. They'll jump to 7 or 8, beat Bama. You're in that number 4 spot. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, same way we saw a couple of years ago. They win that game in the SEC championship. They make the college football playoff. So they have a chance. Do I think they'll beat Georgia if they somehow beat Bama? Absolutely not. But they definitely have a chance against Bama on the road. Iron Bowl, we've seen crazy things happen. And
I do love it because the narrative kind of got killed. Because what we were talking about a week ago, we were like, man, Kentucky's sitting there with 1 loss.
Yeah.
Oh, Miss is sitting there with 1 loss.
Arkansas.
And the season just kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, it takes care of itself.
What is wrong with Kentucky and playing at Mississippi State? They can't beat Mississippi State.
I don't know. And something told me in the picks, pick Mississippi State. Cause like I said, Will
They were a
Rogers
1-point
actually,
favorite. Vegas knows.
he looks good. Will Rogers looks good this
Yeah, he
year.
set the SEC record for completion percentage.
He
I
looks
actually,
good.
I actually believe he broke Grayson Lambert's record for
Mhm.
completion percentage that he set against South Carolina. I'll have to go back and double check that, but I know he did set the record for completion percentage in an SEC game. I mean, nuts.
Yeah, I mean, he looks good. They've been somewhat impressive this year, Mississippi State. I give them their kudos. But I mean, Kentucky's kind of taking a nosedive. I think they might lose. They could possibly lose to Tennessee.
They have a tough remainder of their schedule. They want to give a shout out though in that Auburn game. Jalen Simpson, former Frederica Academy Knight, gets a big interception of Matt Corral there in the end zone to prevent them from scoring. So shout out to Jalen Simpson on that one. But just looking around, Cam, I thought there was a bunch of huge games this weekend. Oklahoma rolled in their game 52 to 21 over Texas Tech. Caleb Williams has come in all of a sudden as a freshman that didn't start until the midway point. You're starting to get some Heisman rumblings about him.
Yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned the Kentucky loss at Mississippi State. Mississippi State looked really good in that one. Did you see the end of the SMU Houston game?
No.
All right.
Not.
We talked about this game. SMU came in undefeated.
Yeah.
Houston had one loss. After tying the game 37 to 37 with, just double checking, 17 seconds to go in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They kicked the ball to a man named Marcus Jones. Cam, have you ever heard of Marcus Jones?
Well, I'm about to hear about him now.
You absolutely are. Marcus Jones returned that kickoff 100 yards to the house to give Houston the 44 to 37 lead, which they would hold on to give SMU their first loss of the season.
I would love to
Marcus
see that
Jones is one kickoff return touchdown short of tying the NCAA record for career return touchdowns.
And who has the record? Hester?
There's a few guys. I think there's guys tied up the top. Marcus Jones, remember the name. Houston, now 7-1 on the season. Dana Holgerson's got something going on down there.
Bad coaching, though. If you know the kid can return kicks that,
yes.
Why would you kick it to him in the first place?
Yeah, that kicker's definitely getting a talking to on the sideline.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to leave you with this bad taste in your mouth before we go to break. You know who got a big win this weekend and is just kind of hanging out and nobody's paying attention to him?
Oh, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Yeah, I figured you.
They are 7-1 on the season.
Yeah.
They beat.
You see how I smacked my teeth?
They beat North Carolina 44 to 34. I thought North Carolina was going to win that game. Yeah. North Carolina's just bad.
I thought
you cannot trust North Carolina to do anything. I mean, Jack Cohn threw for 213 yards and they lost, or they won. Excuse me. They beat North Carolina.
I don't get it.
Well, I mean, Kyron Williams ran for 199 yards in that game. He's really good. North Carolina's just bad. Sam Howell's just counting the days until he can go pro.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be a good pro, man.
I agree with that, but
I think he'd be a good pro.
Just keep that in your back of your mind. Notre Dame's hanging out, one loss. Probably gonna win out.
Please don't let that
Probably gonna win out. Be sitting there at 11-1, and so the playoff committee is gonna be like, guys, listen. I know you want to put Cincinnati in, but it's a one-loss Notre Dame.
There's no way they get in over even a one-loss Cincinnati. There's absolutely no way.
It's gonna be fascinating. That's why I think a lot of teams around the country are actually actively pulling for Georgia because Georgia's not gonna lose in their next 4 games.
No,
I'm comfortable saying that.
Nah.
I respect Tennessee. Georgia's not gonna lose in their next 4 games. Georgia's already clinched up their spot in the SEC championship. So those other teams are saying, listen, Georgia, go ahead and beat whoever you play in the SEC championship. So there's not 2 teams from the SEC that get in.
First time in my lifetime that Georgia, well, I don't want to jinx it, but first time in my lifetime, if they do so, go undefeated.
A regular season? Yeah.
Yeah. First time.
Because our own Ben Troop ruined the other best chance of that.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
Right?
Thanks a lot.
Right? We'll talk to Ben. He's hurting. Let him have it. Not happy after that performance from his Gators this weekend. We got to take a quick break. We'll come back with more right here on Second Down. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. Braves fall in Game 5 of the World Series. Now headed back to Houston for at least one more game. Hopefully, one more game. How you feeling, Cam?
I mean, any other way?
Let me ask you
Atlanta.
this. How are you feeling after the
feels.
Grand Slam last night?
Oh man, I was like, okay, the Grand Slam. I said, oh, they coming out swinging. They might try to get this out early, and then
Yeah.
Astros kind of slowed things down and said, oh, y'all forgot who we are. So
I kind of had the BJ Bennett moment last night where it's like after that, I was like, number one, it was too early.
yeah,
I was like, you went up 4-0, like that. Still had 8 innings for them, and also they kept showing the stats. Like Carlos Correa didn't have a hit. Jose Altuve had been struggling in this series, right? Alex Bregman, literally the funniest moment of the night. And it's how the universe works. Is you have Alex Bregman coming up, and he had fallen down to 7th in the order after being up as high as 3, and so the Braves have the in-stadium organ player that kind of plays the different songs to make fun of or just kind of poke fun of the players when he comes up. You know what he played when Bregman walked up? Free Falling by Tom Petty. Free Falling down the lineup. I think he was hitting like 071 in the postseason. As soon as you play that, ropes a double all the way out
Can't
to the
get
wall,
professional
scores 2
started like
runs.
that.
You know, it's just like it's just the way the universe works. As soon as you mention it,
yeah, can't get professional start like that.
it's gonna go
Don't
go
poke
the
the
other way.
bear.
I'm not even sure Alex Bregman noticed because you have so many people screaming. But that'll do it for Truist Park for the 2021 season. Last 2 games will be out in Minute Maid at I think they call it the Juice Box out there. So you'll be at the Juice Box for at least the next game, maybe 2 if this one goes to 7. You'll be able to listen to Game 6 tomorrow night right here on ESPN Radio. 3 and Out coming up next with BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, and Kevin Thomas.